This is a bedrock, we call a bedrock map. You're standing here, you don't see bedrock. We're going to see bedrock. What you see here is the surface. So this is a superficial map. These are still today being done today. I met with a geologist from Tufts University who just this year published incredibly detailed map, bedrock map, surface map of the Middlesex Fells. Really exciting. Go on, just type on Middlesex Fells, and you'll see what the power of modern technology, radiometric dating and plate tectonics, you see how much that really helps. So this is the bedrock map. Basically everything, you see this line right here, this kind of line? That's a fault. We're actually right on it, kind of?
I think we are right on the fault. So we're not on the map, and this is a great example of things that we can tell are wrong. And I haven't found it published anywhere that it's wrong, but we know we just dug the foundation for Honeywell School a few blocks that way, and they were jackhammering through Dedham granite,
which is the pink,
which is supposed to be the pink.
Oh,
but they show the fault line.
But they showed it actually. I forget what the school is, but it's off the fault. Anyhow, the fault runs all the way through the town. It kind of follows the train tracks until it gets out here, and then it kind of zooms out toward Natick. Well, it's here, and the Dedham is huge. I mean, we have a little sliver of it here, but it goes all the way from Weston all the way underneath Cape Cod. And then the Roxbury is likewise for conglomerate. It's a huge, huge conglomerate layer. I've seen conglomerate layers that are no bigger than the size of a house. This one's the size of a couple of cities and towns. It's big. We're going to see a lot of Roxbury. But I'll just point out the Roxbury is conglomerate. It's filled with pebbles. And I'll just point out that all the pebbles in the Roxbury come from over here to the north. And so everything that makes up the Roxbury originated here, and in geology that tells you one important thing. This happened first, this happened second. That's kind of a standard thing in geology you have to do all the time. Throughout all of this has been intruded in all different angles by basalt. And it's got different names. They call it diabase when it's just a thin layer, but it's all basically basalt. Granite is quartz and feldspar. The basalt that crisscrosses everything is feldspar and pyroxene. There's no quartz. So you can really tell the difference. And anyhow, that rock called the diabase is the thing you see all around town, everywhere. It's really dark, black. Looks like it's had a lot of soot on it over the years. But actually it is just dark colored. It's not a great looking rock. Although they've taken the polishing up now and using it for some, home decorating. Okay, so that's basically there's a big fault. We're kind of standing on it. Looking that way, you've got the Roxbury conglomerate and some other stuff. There's basalt, diabase all over the place. This is a superficial map. Basically, this is what the glacier left behind. So this is all covered by a glacier. Right here, it was 2 miles thick. Think about it, 2 miles thick. That's 10,000 feet thick. It's like the Rocky Mountains. That's how thick it was. And it really didn't leave here until about 14,000 years ago. It melted back. It pushed forward. It brought with it, when it pushed forward, it brought with it a lot of stuff from Canada and upper New England. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Those are called erratics. And then when it melted back, it just drops them out. And it drops out all this soil. And we're going to talk a little bit more about all of that. Okay,
So
Chris.
So I'm going to try to go real fast because we do want to get walking.
Geologic time fast?
Okay? even faster. This first super old one is when all the bedrock under Wellesley was formed. So we have, this goes up to about 540 million years ago. That's when multicellular life first appeared on the planet. And unfortunately, we're just a little bit before that. So the Dedham granite that Mike was talking about is just over 600 million years old. And that formed when Wellesley was part of a volcanic island chain like the Japan, or the Philippines, formed by an ocean plate going under another plate. That when the plate goes under, all the water gets released, and that causes it's all solid rock underneath you. It's not lava underneath you, because the pressure is so great it makes the rock solid even though it gets hotter and hotter. But once one of those plates goes under and all that steam gets released, it acts like salt acts on the road to melt ice, and it melts the rock. The rock is free to flow, and it forms big pockets of magma. And if it sits and cools underneath, it forms that granite that Mike just held up. Big crystals form in the rock. If it finds a way up, either through a volcano, and we have those, you can see volcano flows in Broadmoor. We won't see those on the trip, but there's volcano flows there. If it stays under its granite, if it comes up partway, it can form those diabase dikes that Mike was talking about. They come up fast, and then they form that dark rock with no crystals in it because it freezes so fast. So that's how the dedum formed. It's the rock that didn't make it to the surface and crystallized underground underneath that volcanic island chain. Then some of it eroded back down, and Mike didn't mention, but there's 1/3 piece of bedrock under that kind of just pokes under Pond Road and a little bit of Wellesley College, and that's the Westboro, and that's our oldest. That's from the first time that happened with the volcanic island chain. It happened a second time, which is when the dedum was formed. A second plate went under, and then it moved around until it smashed into North America. So we weren't originally part of this continent. First we were an island chain that smashed in, and then another continent smashed in against and separated. And when it separated, that's when a lot of the dikes formed. Then a second supercontinent formed right here. The last one, Pangaea, that you may have heard about, when Morocco was actually right against Boston, formed. That separated again, and we ended up staying with North America, but some of it went off to Africa, some of it went off to Scotland and parts north. And that's how they can tell that that's all the same rock here as you find in those places. And you can match up the part of the coast of Africa and Europe that you align with by matching the rock types. So all of that happened. Every time it's stretched, granite is super hard to crush, but when it gets pulled apart, it does break apart. And if it breaks apart, now there's no pressure, all the rock melts, and you get those diabase dikes that form and freeze. That's why we have them in a couple of different directions from the different ways that we got stretched apart here on those different breakups. So all that happens, that forms all the dedum granite. At some point, they're eroding away, as Mike said. That forms the Roxbury pudding stone along the edge and maybe the continental shelf of that continent. There's disputes about whether it was in the river or whether it was under the ocean, or whether some of it was in a river and some of it was under the ocean. But anyway, it formed from that eroding volcano chain. Fast forward, so that's all 600 million years ago. No life on the planet, but now we've all smashed together. 2.5 million years ago is when the ice age starts. For 2.5 million years, ice is flowing over Wellesley, grinding every bit of dirt and everything off, so it's only rock here underneath that ice.
You're like three of them.
What's
Chipmunks rolling around. I'm sorry, there were 3 of them playing.
That's perfect.
Yeah, they're paying attention.
So 2.5 million years, we're just ice moves. It wasn't just sitting on top of it. Ice flows like a river, just slowly. Absolutely grinds everything on here. All the land is shaped like mountain rocks and whatever that you would see. So why are we standing on flat ground right here? It's because as the glacier finally melted 15,000 years ago, it for a while parked here next to Wellesley. There was an enormous lake that covered a whole bunch of towns around here. which is why they're all at the same level. If you look at a map, it'll be, I think it's like 150 feet. I forget what the exact sea level is, but you can trace it from Natick to Needham to Newton. It's all either at this level or like 10 feet up. They can see where the different boundaries of that lake were as the glacier paused for a long time, built up loamy or whatever that clay is that's at the bottom of a lake, and then it finally dams burst, it melted more, and that lake went away. And so wherever you see flat ground in Wellesley, you know the glacier was carving all these divots and it's all rocky, so the flat ground is all either lake bed or it's a place where the glacier had paused right in front of it, and it was washing all the gravel across. So it was either a gravel outpour that formed a flat part, or it's lake bed. And I think this right here is probably once lake bed. The brook, I think, I want to get our names all on a paper at some point in a geology publication, because I think that the brook here is actually looks like right where the fault probably lies. That might be a reason why the brook would pick that spot to go here. At least it's certainly a nice straight line, and we're going to see Roxbury pudding stone on our walk, which is right on the other side of the brook. We know there's Dedham granite right on this side of the brook because they just dug a foundation a couple blocks that way, which means we're certainly, and the fault tends to be, it's not a line like a sheet of paper. It's wider than that. So we're very near the fault, if not on it. And we're going to see some other formations that the glacier left behind, and we'll talk about those when we spot them. So I think that's enough chatting. I'm happy to answer a few questions, and then let's get moving.
Chris, I want to make one point about the fault. So we're on the fault, but it's here somewhere. That side is the downdrop side. This is not like the San Andreas, which is this way. Yeah. It's this way, and it's kind of like the Tetons. It's this way, and the downdrop side is there, and the uplifted side, it's always relative, right, is over here, and that differential exceeds a mile. It's not like a little thing. It's huge, but it's not active anymore. So don't worry.
So the only reason I'm doing this is because of the unit that Wellesley Geologically. So good. It was inspired originally by that capture and power building. Get their names on a scientific paper. So if anybody spots we're about 100 feet into our walk, and we're coming on our first next bit of geology. You literally can't walk 100 feet in Wellesley without finding evidence, without seeing evidence of the geological forces that we're talking about, either of the Ice Age or of when Wellesley was a volcanic chain. And hopefully all of you have enjoyed this walk along the brook path many times, and have noticed these crazy rocks that are everywhere along the path and in the middle of people's yards. And then because it's super expensive to move these any distance, so to do it just as an ornament is an odd thing, especially when they are dropped all around. This was actually how the theory of the Ice Ages, one of the things that really sparked it was a couple of geologists looking at some rocks at the edge of a glacier, and one of them saying, it's funny, those are just like the rocks that are in the village at the bottom of the mountain. And then the other geologist thought about it for a couple of years and came out when he was supposed to give a topic on another thing and said, wait a minute, there's these rocks all over North America and Europe and whatever at the up down to this latitude, I think they're all from glaciers dropping, and now that's what everybody believes. So this is a glacial erratic. They can be 20 or 30 feet high. You know, they can be big as a house, but they can, you know, range anywhere from the glaciers carrying everything from sand and dust through to rocks that are you know, 50 feet across. They get worn down over time, and so Mike would be much better able to speak on how far he thinks this particular rock has come. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mike.
So we were here. We walked this course a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got thinking about these, and there's a bunch of these. They all look very similar. Composition looks very similar. It's a granite. The thing about granites is they come in all different colors. You know, pink, not blue, but pink, gray, black, white. It's a very white granite with a lot of red pieces in it. For any of you who spent a lot of time in New Hampshire, you might say, oh, that doesn't really look like a New Hampshire granite. And I don't think it is a New Hampshire granite. I think it's from Mount Katahdin. Not literally Mount Katahdin, but that whole region. Mount Katahdin is just one high spot, and a really, I didn't realize it until I looked, a really large body of granite that is you know, maybe 20 miles, 30 miles long. And I was able to dig up a lot of close-up photos and things, and it looks just like all of these erratics that we have here. And the track, they know pretty well what the track of the different parts of the glacier were, and the part that crossed here and then melted back from here, that looks like it crossed over central Maine. So the question would be, is it really from Canada? Or, you know, on Cape Cod I found a rock on the beach that could only be from Newfoundland. You know? So I have a feeling this is from the that range of mountains that Katahdin is part of.
And then speaking of things that might fool geologists, we can take one step back, because we were looking at this and going, wow, this is a crazy rock, you know, really interesting texture compared to everything else that you see.
This is a shale, slightly metamorphosed shale. It's a shale that's been squeezed, and it's kind of converting from shale slowly into a slate. It's almost, I mean, maybe it's a slate, you can debate, you know. It's slate-like, not your blackboard slate, but geology slate. Go on.
So
good.
So should we, is this
oh yeah, so I'll say, so we saw this last week and we were like, whoa, you know, this is weird. I don't know of any rocks north of here, even in Canada, that look like this. And there was something that was bugging me. And then I went back to my house and I got thinking, oh no, actually I left you and I looked over into the creek here and I noticed that all the rock that they're using for riprap is what you do to support, it's this. Not only that, but there's some drill holes in it. This side's cut off.
And then we look and see this side is all, you know, clearly cut by a.
And then it's like, oh, well, I have seen this before. This is the rock. It's called the Cambridge. They got different names for it. The Cambridge mudstone, Cambridge argillite, whatever. But it's a shale slate that's underneath Cambridge and Somerville. And so I think what happened is that there must have been a work site there. And because there's no quarries, but they must have been like digging a hole for a building, had all this stuff, sold it to the town of Wellesley to put riprap, and this was too big to put in the side, so they just left it and said, well, this looks pretty good. They put it right here.
So as you're walking by, you think you can get a close look at these, and that is also pudding stone. Someone asked, what is all this stuff that the pudding stones are wedged in? And if you think of this as the side of the continent, Wellesley at the time is an island chain. It's all that granite has been lifted up from seismic activity, and now it's weathering down into the sea. So there's braided rivers coming off those mountains. There's cobbles, and we'll see some even more stunning examples of this a little bit later in the walk. There's cobbles just like you would see in a New Hampshire mountain stream and everything that are all piling down these rivers, and they're falling off the edge of the volcanic island into the ocean. There's lots of mud and silt and stuff going with them, and that's one of the problems with figuring out the way pudding stone actually was. Is for most rocks you can say, oh, let me look at the lines in it, and then when it's flat, that's the way it used to be, and if it's tilted like this, it means an earthquake or something, moved it. But pudding stone kind of formed off the edge, so the lines don't necessarily, even if it was formed in a river, the rocks tend to be tilted a little bit, and then the mud comes and forms, and then the pressure puts it all together and makes it into a conglomerate. And it got enough pressure at some point. There were mountains at various times. People debate whether they were as high as the Himalayas here or as high as the Andes, but on that order, right where we are here, after we glommed into North America, at first Avalonia, which is what they call the island chain, smashes in, and that of course raises mountains, and then another continent smashes in, and I forget which one hit at that point, and then splits apart, and then Africa. And each time that happened, mountains were formed that were enormous. So putting pressure on the rock that was underneath, because all of this bedrock was buried, was thousands of miles or thousands of feet under the tops of those mountains, getting force put on it. So that's the pudding stone. You can see there's some really good examples right along here as you come by to see the lines in the rock and the rock showing through. And there's a story about Catherine Fowler Billings standing on a pudding stone rock, keeping them at that point from splitting it, because the town was trying to put a path through. Now I'm kind of suspicious that when she retired or moved to New Hampshire, that the town finally got their way, because this looks suspiciously like this was once one rock. But there was a newspaper article, I think, I forget what the reference was.
Report.
A Wellesley report that was talking about her. One woman protest that kept them from doing it that day. And this is likely that may be a piece of Roxbury pudding stone that was broken off and just moved a little bit, because it doesn't look to me like it was actually bedrock in the ground. This looks like bedrock in the ground. You can see that it's really in there. It looks as if it's had a glacier run over it to form the shape that it's in. So this is probably bedrock right here.
And in other words, if you drill a hole here on that, it's solid rock, solid rock, solid rock to the center of the earth. All the way. And there could be a couple of little mini caves, but basically that is the crust of the earth right there. Bedrock. They call it that. It's a bedrock outcrop.
Could you eventually get back?
Yeah, if you do it, this
I
is probably from
So for these,
this is probably from
I'm gonna keep us moving. So there's more examples of erratics here, like you can see everywhere. And there are some interesting different rocks, but
And there are
to
cars.
see some more things, we're gonna keep going. Might happen when it melts back and forth, but if it melts back earlier, then the next glacier run wipes it all away. But the last time it's melting back, the sun is beating down on that glacier. It's really starting to melt. There's water has got to go somewhere. Every once in a while, a hole will form. It'll go to the bottom of the glacier, and it still wants to run out. So you get at the bottom of a glacier, you'll have these rivers that are pouring out from all the melt that's happening back in the glacier, and it'll be carrying rocks and cobbles and pebbles and things down with it as it forms, and those start to form a riverbed at the bottom, just like you would find a riverbed in the mountains, and then it slowly builds up over time as the glacier stays there, because the glacier doesn't melt back in one season and now it's gone from town. It's years and years and years, and probably I think it was a century or more that it was stalled here at Wellesley. So those build up, and the ice walls hold the river in the same place. So it keeps on building up higher and higher, kind of exiting higher and higher as that riverbed builds. And then when the glacier finally melts away, you've got this reverse imprint of the rivers that carried all the water out from underneath the glacier. And those are called eskers, and they tend not to get taken away because it's full of all these annoying rocks of all different sizes. It's like completely unuseful for anything. So you've got to just have a bulldozer that you want to take it all out, or you leave it there. So there's a bunch of them in Wellesley. If you're ever going through the woods around Wellesley College, the woods around Longfellow Pond, you'll see what looked like, wow, somebody built us this great path. It's about 10 feet wide and got little cobbles on it. Well, nobody built that. It's the glacier built it. It's the web of.
One right here.
That's all?
There is one. Yeah, there is one right there. Yeah.
That's not the one that we're looking at.
That's not the one that we're looking at right now. No, they're all over the place. There's lots of unmarked eskers in Wellesley.
So this is Wellesley,
Really,
it's
actually
flat,
pretty.
but when you get to Wellesley Hills, it's really hilly. Is that
Wellesley Hills is mostly so north of route of the train tracks. You mean? Like when you go Cliff Road.
right?
Yeah, that's all the Dedham granite, and the glacier, for whatever reasons, chose not to leave eskers and drumlins up there, but rather it did smooth the rocks out. You see lots of smooth rocks up there, and it left a lot of just loose gravel and boulders just lying around, and that's called till. But these definitions, till, esker, drumlin, outwash plain, truth is it was very messy, and they're all intertwined and messed up together, and it's a little bit of a convenience for geologists to give them one name or the other. It's kind of a little bit of everything.
And this is called Problem Rock. The story that I've heard, that I'm going to believe is true, is that it's called Problem Rock because it was given as a problem set to the Wellesley College students who were taking geology to say, a few of the clues that you'll need to use to figure that out are, that it tends to, the glacier runs over rock, so it tends to create a ramped surface from one side, and then the suction as the glacier goes over tends to split and pluck rocks off. So
From the south side.
from the south side. So you can find some bedrock that is bedrock that was formed by glacier that that formation on one side, and then a plucked formation on the other, and then you have to judge based on weathering and what do you think of how much did this tumble before it landed here, if you do think that it was moved. And so that's the problem of problem rock. But do come up and look at it. This, particularly on this far side and some of the spots in here, you've got these great big football-sized cobbles that you can see of Dedham granite and other things that are embedded in this rock. So, oh, there is another problem with problem rock, which is that they put a plaque up, which is around in the back of problem rock, that says it's 200 million years old, and it's way older than 200 million years old. So it's almost 600 million. It's like 595 million years old. So, but that's an example, as Mike was saying, of how far dating has come in the last 50 years. It's just dramatically changed. You know, people were guessing based on, hey, this is on top of that. Maybe it's 10 years older, and it turns out, no, it's 300 million years older. So it's hard, and you just try to get better all the time. So come take a look at it.
The strike slip on this, did you say this?
I did.
The strike slip on this is the same as what I think has got to be an outcrop, bedrock outcrop over there. Now that doesn't mean therefore this has to be bedrock, but it just kind of adds to the possibility that it's what Chris described. What do they call it? A roche moutonnet?
So roche moutonnet is this kind of characteristic ramp on one side and then steep on the other. The weird thing about this, and this is where Mike and I actually disagree, so one of us is wrong on the problem set.
We're both wrong.
Or maybe we're both wrong. So this is an aqueduct we're walking on right now, and we're about to see it cross the end of Fuller Brook, where Fuller Brook meets the Charles. But the sides of this do look a lot like some of the bigger eskers that you find in the around Wellesley College. So if you walk through the woods there, you're going to see a trail like this with sides just as steep, but the trail is going to be covered with cobbles like you saw in that Roxbury pudding stone, except they're just going to be in the dirt, and that is a sign that it really is an esker. It's not going to be as regular as this either. They kind of wander around just like a river through a stream. But we're stopping here because of the pond on this side. So this is a kettle pond. They've kind of built this right up against one side of it. But as the glacier receded, sometimes big blocks of ice broke off, and they got covered with dirt, so they were insulated. And those blocks of ice might stay there for centuries because they're insulated from the ground, while the glacier is still just 10 feet away. It's not melting anywhere, but it's getting covered by the runoff, so it's getting more and more insulated. So then the glacier finally does melt away, but the ice stays for a really long time. And then eventually, the climate has changed enough that even underneath the earth, it gets warm enough for that big block of ice to melt. And the ground collapses over it finally as that ice melts. And it tends to form a very round hole. And you find these all over Wellesley. Lots of them have been filled in because it can be kind of annoying to have a hole on your property.
It's like a large sinkhole.
It's like a large sinkhole. It is a large sinkhole, effectively.
From a different cause.
Yeah, right. And this is a great example of one. We're actually going to go walk right by it on the other side. So But you can see the rounded form of it, and that's because any bit of ice that's sticking out anywhere tends to melt fast, so it tends to form a ball. A sphere is what gets left behind, and so the imprint that gets left is that final sphere that lasted for tens or hundreds of years until it finally melted away.
And if there is not enough water, it's just a kettle hole.
Right. So it's they call it a kettle pond if it's below the water table, because then it fills with water. But if it happened to have happened above the water table, it's called a kettle hole. It looks just the same. It just isn't wet at the bottom. So this is where Little Fuller Brook empties into the Charles River. So this is still Fuller Brook, or it may have another name because it joins with another brook right here at the end. But right where you're looking, where you can see the trees in the distance there, that's where it's going into the Charles. So that is the Charles River we're looking at in the distance. And last week when we walked this was all completely underwater from one end to the other. But now you can actually see the meanders that are forming here. There's some. If you look at the turns in the mud there, in the middle of summer, the water is going to course from this side all the way over to that side, and then it's going to go back. So the stream is carving this meandering path as it makes its way to the Charles River. So these are the meanders that the brook had been straightened apparently about 70 years ago, but it's begun to carve its winding path through here again as it reaches the end of the Charles.
But in the Charles River itself is...
And the Charles River itself is an insane meander.
Well,
It's
that's
like
why they called it Quinnipiac, which means turns on itself.
yeah.
In the native could.
Sometimes I feel like Wellesley is an island because it seems like I'm always crossing over the Charles to get out of it. The golf course itself is a whole mix of things. You'll see hills and bumps and whatever. And this area of the edge of a glacier ends up being a terrific place to put a golf course. So I'm trying not to be too loud. The country club over on the other side is also right past. We talked about those terminal moraines and then the outwash, and the country club is also built on one, and this is built on one because it tends to be, as Mike Thonis was talking about, it's a messy area. It'll have bumps where a hole was in the ice and a whole bunch of gravel deposited in one crazy place, and a part of an
You
esker
don't have to
formed.
engineer topography.
Right. You don't. You can very cheaply do a bit of landscaping, and you have some really cool golfing. So in Wellesley, two of the golf courses are built on that same outwash plain kind of messy type topography. So you can see that to your left as we walk along, kind of all the craziness there, and then on your right will be your kettle hole. And for those that arrived at the end, I was saying we are walking along an active golf course, so I'm not gonna talk loud. We'll just keep our voices down as we exit.
Also, we're not going to say 4. So keep your eyes open.
thank you to everyone for coming on the walk and for all the terrific questions and engagement everybody had. Whoever it was that arranged for the owl, thank you for that, Mike. There are other walks and events that the Conservation Land Trust will put on shortly. So watch for that. I'm sure we'll do more geology walks as well, and hopefully it'll be just as gorgeous a day as it was today. But thank you everyone for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll stick around for questions for a little bit.
Thank you to our rock stars, Chris Crowley, Mike Thonis, and Elisa Fine. There she is, Elisa Fine, and also Rama Ramaswamy, who couldn't make it today. Rock stars who really made this possible.